All right, let's jump right in. Today we're taking a deep dive into the Faroe Islands. Specifically, we're looking at all the news that came out on November 5th. It's like a personal news briefing straight from the North Atlantic.
It's actually pretty amazing how much happened in just one day. We've got everything from politics and economics to sports and even a bit of health news.
Yeah, for a place with only about 54,000 people, the Faroe Islands sure knows how to keep busy.
Absolutely. So why don't we kick things off with the political scene? Sirius Stenberg just became the new leader of the Chodaveldi party.
Oh yeah, that was big news. Hungi Hoydal resigned, and now Stenberg stepping up. But hold on, what is the Joe Vilde party all about anyway?
Well, in a nutshell, they're a left-leaning party. One of their big things is pushing for full independence for the Faroe Islands from Denmark.
Okay, that's a pretty significant goal.
Yeah.
So does Stenberg taking over mean we're going to see some big moves toward independence?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely makes things interesting.
So potential political shakeup check. What else is happening?
Well, this next one might surprise you. There's been talk about the Faroe Islands and Greenland potentially having a lot more sway in the Nordic Council.
Now, remind me, what's the Nordic Council again? I know it's something to do with the Nordic countries, but
Right, so basically it's like a group for all the Nordic countries, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, plus the Faroe Islands and Greenland. They get together and work on all sorts of things, environmental issues, social welfare, even culture.
right, right. But why are the Faroe Islands and Greenland suddenly so important? What's changed?
Well, there have been some shifts within the council, and the thinking is that if the Faroe Islands and Greenland team up, they could actually have a lot more influence on decisions.
That's pretty wild. The Faroe Islands are a tiny nation, and suddenly they could have a bigger say on the international stage.
Yep, it's a big deal for them. Okay, so we've got political drama and international relations. What about the everyday lives of people in the Faroe Islands? What's happening there?
Yeah, what are people talking about over their morning coffee?
Well, one big debate right now is all about public pensions. There's been this proposal to cut pensions for folks who live together but aren't married, and let me tell you, people are not happy about it.
Yeah, pensions are always a touchy subject. It's
Mm.
people's livelihoods, their security.
Hmm.
Why the proposed cuts, though? What's the reasoning?
Well, the argument is that it'll help keep the pension system stable in the long run, make sure there's enough money for everyone. But a lot of people are pushing back, saying it's not fair and that it'll hurt some of the most vulnerable folks.
It's tough, right? It's like a real-world economics problem playing out.
Yeah.
You've got limited resources, and you have to figure out the best way to use them, but there are always trade-offs, and someone's going to feel the impact.
Exactly. And on top of that, we've got 6 mayors stepping down, so the upcoming elections are going to be pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Lots of open seats, lots of people wanting to grab them. It's like a whole other layer of political drama unfolding.
You got it. So we've got national politics, international relations, local elections, and pension debates. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the economy. There's been some buzz about the historic Molini mill in Skalavik. They're expanding.
Okay, so I've got political drama, pension battles, and now mill expansions. What is it with November 5th in the Faroe Islands? Everyone just decided to make big moves on the same day.
Uh-huh, right. But hey, it makes for an exciting deep dive, wouldn't you say? So back to the mill, it's been around forever, like it's practically a landmark. Expanding it is good news for the local economy, and it also shows they're committed to keeping their industrial history alive.
It's like they're finding that balance between honoring their past and moving forward, which, when you think about it, is kind of what a lot of these stories are about: change and adaptation. And speaking of traditions, I can't talk about the Faroe Islands without mentioning fishing. Any news on that front?
Actually, there is, and it's not the best news. The cod quotas in the Barents Sea are going down next year.
Oh, that's not good. The Faroes fishing industry is a big part of their economy. What kind of impact could this have?
It's hard to say for sure, but it could definitely affect things. Less cod means less money for the fishing companies, which could mean fewer jobs, and even higher fish prices at the market.
It's like a ripple effect. One change in one area can impact so many other things.
Exactly. But on a slightly brighter note, the overall economic outlook for the Faroe Islands seems to be pretty stable. They just set the equalization percentage for 2025 at 3.6%.
Okay, hold up. Equalization percentage. You've lost me.
Right, sorry. It's basically this number that's used to adjust things like public benefits and pensions. A higher percentage usually means the economy is doing well.
So 3.6%, good or bad?
It's not bad. It suggests things are pretty stable, which is good news for folks who rely on those benefits and pensions.
Okay, so we've covered politics, pensions, mills, fish, and even a little economic jargon.
Hmm.
I think I'm sensing a theme here. Change and adaptation. What do you think?
I think you're spot on. We haven't even touched on sports yet.
Oh, you're right. Get ready for some football drama.
You bet. Buckle up. All right, so let's dive into the world of Faroese football. Idun Kleckstein, the coach of the national team, well, he just made some big changes. 5 changes to the squad for the upcoming matches.
5. Wow. That's a pretty bold move. Any idea what's behind it? I mean, why so many changes all at once?
Well, there's always a lot of speculation when a coach shakes things up like this. Some people are saying he's trying to, breathe some new life into the team after some tough losses. Others think he's maybe giving some younger players a shot, see what they can do.
It's like he's playing a high-stakes game of chess, but with footballers. Every move has consequences, and everyone's trying to figure out his grand strategy.
Exactly. And speaking of winning strategies, we got to talk about HB. They just clinched the Faroes Cup for the 30th time.
30 times. That's incredible. That's got to be some kind of record, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about the final match. Was it a nail-biter?
Oh, from what I've heard, it was a real battle. Went back and forth, but in the end, HB came out on top. Must have been an amazing moment for the players and fans.
I can only imagine the celebrations.
Oh.
All right, so we've got political intrigue, economic developments, and now a football victory. Is there anything else happening in the Faroe Islands today? What other stories caught your eye?
Well, let's shift gears a bit. There's something going around. A mycoplasma outbreak across the islands.
Oh, that doesn't sound good. What exactly is mycoplasma?
It's a type of bacteria that can cause those, respiratory infections. This one seems to be causing something they're calling cold pneumonia. Lots of people are dealing with this really persistent cough.
Yikes, that sounds pretty awful. Is it serious?
Fortunately, it's usually not life-threatening, but it can definitely drag on. The health officials are urging everyone to be extra careful, wash their hands, all the usual precautions.
Yeah, good advice. It's so easy to forget about those simple things sometimes. So it's been a day of highs and lows, hasn't it? Political changes, economic ups and downs,
Yes.
a football win, and now a health challenge. It's like a microcosm of life itself.
You're absolutely right. It just goes to show that even in a place that seems, small and remote like the Faroe Islands, there's always something happening, always a story to tell.
And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. You never know what you're going to find. Speaking of stories, did you come across anything about the cultural scene in the Faroe Islands today?
I did, and it's a heartwarming one. They just opened a brand new kindergarten.
Ah, that's lovely. I bet the kids are so excited. Is there anything special about this new kindergarten?
Well, from what I've read, they really focused on creating a stimulating and nurturing environment for the little ones. They've got this big outdoor play area where the kids can just run around and explore. And inside, it's all bright colors and tons of learning materials.
Sounds like a dream come true for any kid. It's great that they're investing in early childhood education. It shows they're thinking about the future.
Absolutely. It's all about setting those kids up for success. Okay, so we've talked about politics, economics, sports, health, even education. And guess what? We're still not done. November 5th was a busy day in the Faroe Islands.
I can't wait to hear what else happened. Bring on the next story.
All right, well, remember those distress flares that went off in the National Stadium?
Yeah, that was strange. What was that all about? Did they ever figure it out?
Well, it seems like that was just the beginning. There's been another incident with pyrotechnics, but this time it wasn't at the stadium.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
So someone, or maybe even a group of people, decided to set off illegal distress flares right in the middle of Tórshavn, the capital city.
Seriously? Why on earth would they do that? Distress flares in the city? That seems dangerous.
That's the big question. Nobody seems to know for sure. Some folks think it was just a prank, kids being kids. But others think it could be some kind of protest.
It's definitely bizarre, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you're right, it could be dangerous. Those things are meant for emergencies at sea, not for messing around in a city.
You got it.
Yeah.
It just goes to show, even though the Faroe Islands seem peaceful and quiet, there's always a little bit of unpredictability. You never know what's going to happen next.
I think that's part of what makes it so fascinating. It's a place of contrasts. Stunning landscapes, rich traditions, and then these sudden bursts of, well, weirdness.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Speaking of contrast, let's switch gears again. Did you read about the new cemetery?
A cemetery. That's an interesting topic to pop up in the middle of all this. What's the story there?
It seems like a new cemetery was recently consecrated, and it's not your typical graveyard, from what I gather.
What makes it different?
Well, they designed it to be this really serene and peaceful final resting place. They put a lot of thought into the landscaping and the overall atmosphere. It's meant to be a place where people can remember their loved ones and connect with nature.
That's actually really beautiful. It makes you think about the cycle of life and death.
Yeah,
Even in the middle of all the chaos and uncertainty, there's this sense of peace.
I agree. It's a perspective we often lose sight of in our busy lives.
And it kind of brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, the contrasts and complexities of the Faroe Islands. You have these moments of excitement and drama, but there's also this deep respect for tradition and this profound connection to the natural world.
Exactly. And that kind of ties back to the discussion about the proposed pension changes, doesn't it? It's causing a lot of anxiety and uncertainty for people.
It does. It's a decision that will have real consequences, and it's sparking these big conversations about fairness, about sustainability, about the role of the government. It's like those pension changes are a microcosm of the larger conversations happening in the Faroe Islands right now. How do you balance tradition and progress? How do you create a good life for everyone? How do you adapt to a changing world?
It's true. And you know what? These conversations aren't limited to the Faroe Islands. They're happening all over the world.
That's a good point. Even though we're focusing on a specific place and a specific day, the themes we're uncovering are universal.
Exactly. It makes you realize we're not just learning about the Faroe Islands, we're learning about ourselves.
I love that. All right, we've explored a lot of different stories today, but I'm sure there's even more to discover. What else can you tell us about November 5th in the Faroe Islands?
Well, this one might be interesting for anyone who's ever mailed a letter or sent a package. There's been some talk about changes at Posta.
Posta. You mean the Faroes Postal Service?
Yep, that's the one. Seems like they've had some internal shakeups and brought in a new chairman to try and get things back on track.
Interesting. I always wonder about those behind-the-scenes operations. Like,
Yeah.
how does a postal service actually work? It's one of those things we totally take for granted. I wonder if this means we'll see changes, like maybe faster deliveries, or even some new services.
It's definitely possible. I guess we'll have to wait and see what this new leadership does.
All right, so we've got political dramas, economic ups and downs, a football victory, a health mystery, and now postal service shakeups. Is there anything else? What else did you find?
This next one is, well, it's a little bit heartbreaking. There's some growing concern about loneliness among children after school.
Oh, that's so sad. It's a reminder that even in a place as beautiful as the Faroe Islands, there are still challenges and struggles. Do we know where this loneliness is most prevalent?
Yeah, it seems like it's particularly bad in Eyster Communa. Reports say that something like 1 in 3 children there experience loneliness after school.
Wow, 1 in 3. That's a really significant number. What do you think is causing it?
It's a complex issue, for sure. But some folks are suggesting that there's just a lack of after-school programs and activities, especially in the more rural areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. If kids don't have those opportunities to connect with their peers, it can be hard to, combat that isolation.
Exactly. It really highlights the need for communities to step up and find ways to support their young people, to create those environments where they can connect and engage.
Absolutely, and that's important everywhere, not just in the Faroe Islands. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Politics, economics, sports, health, education, postal services, and even some really important social issues. It's been quite a journey.
It has been, and I think it goes to show that even in a place that might seem small or remote, there are always these really compelling stories unfolding. Stories about, well, about life.
So true. It's like we took a snapshot of life in the Faroe Islands on November 5th, and we saw this whole spectrum of human experience reflected back at us.
I like that. And it brings us to our final thought for today. Remember all those themes we've been seeing throughout this deep dive: change, adaptation, navigating a complex world. Those are themes that resonate with all of us, no matter where we live or what our circumstances are.
So as we wrap up, what can our listeners take away from all of this, even if they're not, planning a trip to the Faroe Islands anytime soon?
I think the key takeaway is to stay curious, to keep exploring, and to remember that even in the most unexpected places, there are stories waiting to be discovered, stories that can teach us about ourselves and the world around us.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our Faroes adventure for today. I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse into life in the Faroe Islands. It's a truly fascinating place.
And remember, staying informed, even in these little bursts, can lead to some pretty amazing discoveries.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay curious.